When there's an office or a house to build, an architect is highly skilled at designing a building, whether curvy or square, and drawing up a blueprint showing what goes where. For any kind of building like a school or a mall, or something really fancy like a symphony hall, or a big apartment tower that's 1,000 feet tall, the architect makes up the plans.
Hello Academy Stars, and welcome back to the studio. I'm very excited about this week because we are going to be studying architecture. Now, what is architecture? Well, architecture is our towns, our cities, and it's our homes. It's the places we live in. It's the place of school. Architecture are the buildings that we use every single day. Before we get started on our project, we need to know a little bit about the history of architecture. And the best way to learn history is with a little rap, so hit it!
I am an architect! History of architecture! Let's look back in history with this little rhyme to the architecture trends since the beginning of time.
History of architecture. History of architecture.
The birth of architecture, so simple, so sweet. A design so magnificent, it can't be beat. It's a primitive hut, hearth, roots, and foundation. I'm the first architect, and this is my creation. Now chop off the top and you have a new design. An era for the gods and pharaohs so divine. Mud bricks and limestone aligned to constellations, built along the Nile in a pyramid formation. Your pyramids are cool, but they lack in practicality. We're the Greeks and the Romans, and we build for immortality. From the Parthenon to the Pantheon and the Imperial Forum, look at our town plan and all our decorum. Welcome to the Renaissance. We have a new objective. Brunelleschi led the way with linear perspective. Artistic expression at its core, form and engineering for you to adore. With iron and steel, our building stock grew. Crystal Palace, Eiffel Tower, and bridges to name a few. New innovations like the high-rise made cities grow to unprecedented size. Less is more. Strip all ornament, build for the masses and the less fortunate. Black thread and circle specks are the new attire. Steel and glass facades for you to admire. Reject the modern rules, they're boring and bland. This is postmodernism, where ornament is grand. Fractured designs and rules undefined. The crazier the better, let's all lose our minds. The past shaped the present, and now we're here today. With environmental standards, we're building in new ways. Sustainable sites and LEED certified, recycled materials that are locally supplied. The future looks bright with less limitations. Architecture is evolving with more applications. Create the next trend and build in new ways. Frame the future, starting today. We're architects. We're architects. We're architects. We're architects.
Wasn't that a great video? I love those guys. They have several videos on architecture. What I loved about that video is that it showed you the progression of how architecture has moved through history. And that's what I love about architecture. We live with history, but we also are embracing the future. And I'd like to introduce to you two really fabulous architects that have made a huge difference in our world. And the first one I'm going to introduce is Bjarke Ingels. And he is a gentleman from Copenhagen. And one of his buildings that he built recently is called Copenhill. And it is a waste-to-energy power plant. One of the most efficient and cleanest power plants the world has ever seen. But what makes his building so exciting is that it is usable. He actually built a ski slope that goes from the top all the way down to the bottom. And it is so amazing because you just don't get to ski in wintertime in Copenhagen. You get to ski all year long. That is amazing architecture. The second architect that I want you to get a chance to know is the late Zaha Hadid. She's built some amazing buildings. One of her most famous buildings is what we call the Starfish Airport in Beijing, China. It is just extraordinarily beautiful because it really captures the form and function of nature and makes going to the airport a really exciting adventure. So let's get started on this week's project. We are going to be looking at the buildings of downtown Brattleboro. I chose a couple of buildings for you to look at, and we are going to draw the facade of those buildings. In doing so, we are going to look at an artist that I am totally fascinated with. His name is James Gulliver Hancock, and he's an Australian who lives in New York City. And he has decided for his art project to draw every single building in New York City.
I don't really have a favorite building. They're all my favorite when I'm drawing them, you know. It's the one that I'm in front of that I'm in love with at the particular time. You know, it's easy to say the classic buildings or, you know, the brownstones and stuff like that, but yeah, it's really, that's what's the beauty of New York, that everything seems different all the time. When you stop and pay attention to a different thing, something else is different and interesting. It's changing all the time. So I'm attempting to draw all the buildings in New York. So this project just started out as a diary for me. It's like my way of writing what's happening to me. I don't use words, so I use pictures instead. So it's just it just started as a journal. I just wanted to record what I was seeing and have a memory of it more than a photograph. And it was really useful in that respect because it made me stop and look a bit more than I would otherwise.
And what I love about his work is that it's really simple line work. And that's the kind of work I want you to try to do when you draw your building from Brattleboro. Just simple pen and ink drawing with a little bit of color wash. Okay. Now for the challenge. And I actually decided right at this last minute to add two challenges. After you get done doing your facade in pen and ink of a Brattleboro building, I want you to come up with a new school building for Academy School. That'd be really awesome to have a ski slope at Academy School, don't you think? What else could we have? So if you have that time and you're up for the challenge, I want a pen and ink drawing of a new Academy School. Now, here comes my other challenge, and one that is super exciting. We're going to be looking at an artist called Brian Berg. Brian Berg is a Harvard graduate who studied architecture, but he doesn't build any buildings that you and I could live in. No, he makes his living building buildings out of playing cards. And he doesn't use glue. He doesn't use tape. He doesn't use any tricks. He just takes playing cards and he starts building towers. And not just plain old towers. He builds pretty complex structures. So well that you can actually put 600 pounds on some of his structures with playing cards. I want to see what you can do with these playing cards. I'm going to get to it as soon as I get done with this video because I want to see how tall of a tower I can make. So share me those photos because I'm excited about Architecture Week. Let's get to it. every time I do it, I'm supposed to start off 2 inches apart. I'm 2 inches apart. You put them together, make my little apex.